The sun beat down on the playground, casting long shadows across the wood chips. The air smelled of sunscreen and melting popsicles, mingling with the sound of children's laughter. Jake crouched in front of his daughter, Lily, carefully tying the laces of her tiny sneakers. "Hold still, Munchkin," he murmured, tightening the knot. Lily giggled, squirming slightly. "Daddy, can we go back to the swings after?" Jake smiled. "One more time, then we head home for dinner." She grinned, chocolate ice cream smeared across her chin. Her curly brown hair was tied in two uneven pigtails, and her bright green eyes, her mother's eyes, shone with excitement. He stood, dusting off his jeans when he felt it. A presence. A gaze pressing into him like a weight. He turned his head slightly and caught sight of a woman standing a few feet away, staring. Middle-aged. Crisp beige slacks. A striped blouse buttoned to her collarbone. Blonde bob curled in a way that felt calculated. She clutched her designer purse against her side as if it contained state secrets. Jake met her gaze with a polite nod before reaching for Lily's hand. But before he could step away, the woman moved closer, her heels clicking against the pavement with purpose. "That little girl," she said sharply. "Where is her mother?" Jake blinked. "Excuse me?" She folded her arms. "I don't see a mother anywhere." Jake exhaled slowly. He dealt with people like this before. The lingering stares at the grocery store, the awkward, "Is she yours?" at the pediatrician's office. Usually, it ended with a forced smile and an uncomfortable shuffle away. "She's with me," he said evenly, holding Lily's hand. "Is there a problem?" The woman's lips pursed. "I just find it strange." Lily tilted her head. "Daddy, who's she?" Jake squeezed his daughter's hand lightly, a silent reassurance. "Nobody, baby. We're heading home now." But the woman didn't move. Instead, she stepped forward, her tone sharpening. "No, I don't think so." A cold knot formed in Jake's stomach. "Lady, I don't know what your problem is, but we're leaving." The woman's face twisted into something triumphant, as if she had been waiting for him to say that. "Let her go," she ordered, voice carrying through the playground. Jake stiffened. A few heads turned. Parents glancing over their shoulders. A low murmur started among them. Lily clung to his arm. "Daddy?" "Let her go," the woman repeated, louder this time. "I saw you. You don't belong here." Jake's pulse pounded in his ears. "I'm her father," he said carefully. "And I don't have to explain myself to you." But the woman wasn't listening. She was already pulling out her phone, her fingers jabbing at the screen. Her expression had shifted into one of righteous indignation, like she was about to do something heroic. "I'm calling the police," she announced, staring straight at Jake as if daring him to run. The knot in his stomach twisted into something sharper. This wasn't just an uncomfortable encounter anymore. It was dangerous. Lily whimpered. Jake bent down, hands gentle on her shoulders. "It's okay, baby. I got you." But it wasn't okay. The woman turned away slightly, voice urgent into the phone. "Yes, I'm at Greenview Park. There's a man here with a little white girl. She's scared. I think he's trying to take her." Jake's jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Lily wasn't white. She was his daughter, his flesh and blood, but the woman had already decided she didn't belong to him. A few parents had stopped pushing their kids on the swings. Others had turned fully watching. None of them stepped forward. None of them said a word. Lily was crying now, tears tracking through the chocolate smudges on her cheeks. "Daddy," she whispered. Jake forced himself to stay calm. The woman was still talking, her voice urgent, her gaze flicking between him and the street. Waiting for sirens. He had to make a choice. If he walked away, it would look suspicious. If he stayed, he was at the mercy of whoever arrived first. A wail of sirens split the air. Lily flinched. Jake lifted his chin, exhaling through his nose. "Stay close, baby," he murmured. "This is about to get messy." The police car skidded to a stop at the edge of the playground, red and blue lights slicing through the warm afternoon. Lily clung to Jake's arm, her tiny fingers digging into his sleeve. He could feel her trembling. Two officers stepped out. One was a stocky man with close-cropped hair, his hand resting near his holster. The other was younger, thinner, his expression unreadable behind mirrored sunglasses. They took in the scene, the woman with the phone still clutched in her manicured hand, Jake standing tall beside his daughter, and the loose ring of spectators watching with wary silence. "There." The woman jabbed a finger in Jake's direction, her voice thick with urgency. "That's him. He's trying to take that little girl." The older officer narrowed his eyes. "Sir, step away from the child." Jake's chest tightened. I'm her father. The younger officer's sunglasses reflected Jake's face back at him, blank and impassive. We just need to ask a few questions. The woman scoffed. Ask him why she's crying. Ask him why she was trying to pull away. Jake inhaled sharply, forcing himself to stay calm. She's crying because some stranger grabbed her wrist and accused me of. Sir. The older officer's voice hardened. Let's not escalate this. A few parents in the crowd murmured, shifting uncomfortably. None of them spoke up. Jake clenched his jaw and reached into his pocket, moving slowly. He pulled out his wallet and flipped it open. That's my driver's license. My name is Jake Reynolds. And here, he swiped through his phone until he found a photo from Lily's last birthday. Her sitting on his shoulders, both of them wearing matching party hats. This is my daughter. The younger officer took the phone, studying the screen. But the older one was watching Jake carefully, as if waiting for him to make the wrong move. The woman folded her arms, smug. Anyone can fake pictures. How do you know he didn't take that from her real father? Jake let out a slow, measured breath. Lily, sweetheart, he said softly, crouching down. Tell them who I am. Lily sniffled, her breath hitching. You're my daddy. The woman rolled her eyes. She's terrified. He probably told her to say that. That's enough, the younger officer cut in. He handed Jake's phone back and turned to Lily. Hey kiddo. What's your full name? Lily wiped her nose with the back of her hand. Lily Marie Reynolds. Jake watched the officer's expression shift, a flicker of doubt creeping in. And do you know this man? Lily nodded. He's my daddy. The older officer didn't look convinced. Can you prove that, sir? Jake pulled up another document on his phone, holding it steady so they could see. Here's a copy of her birth certificate. My name is right there. The younger officer glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening. He exchanged a look with his partner. But the woman wasn't backing down. You're just going to take his word for it? She demanded. What if he's dangerous? Jake's patience snapped. He turned to her, voice low and steady. Dangerous? You're the one who grabbed my daughter. You're the one who made her cry. The woman's mouth opened, then shut. Her confidence wavered for just a second. The older officer straightened. We still need to verify. Jake cut him off. Call her school. Greenfield Elementary. They'll confirm I pick her up every day. The younger officer pulled out his radio, stepping away to make the call. The tension in the air thickened. The woman shifted from foot to foot, glancing around. The parents nearby averted their eyes. The older officer kept his gaze locked on Jake. You understand we have to be careful. Jake's laugh was bitter. Careful of what? A black man in the park with his own daughter? A flicker of something crossed the officer's face, but he said nothing. Minutes passed. Lily hiccuped softly, still gripping Jake's sleeve. Then the younger officer returned, his face unreadable. He gave a curt nod to his partner before turning to Jake. The school confirmed. You're listed as her primary guardian. Jake exhaled, his shoulders dropping an inch. But before relief could settle, the woman scoffed again. Well, of course they'd say that, she snapped. If he's been picking her up all this time, they don't know she's in danger. The younger officer finally turned to face her directly. Ma'am, we verified the information. There's no issue here. The woman's face flushed. No issue? He still shouldn't be here alone with her. Silence hung in the air. The crowd was still watching, but now their expressions had shifted. The murmurs grew louder. Jake turned to the woman, his voice quiet but firm. What is it really? That you think a father can't take care of his daughter? Or that a father who looks like me can't have a daughter who looks like her? Her lips pressed into a thin line. The younger officer's voice cut through the thick air. Ma'am, did you witness any actual harm to the child? The woman hesitated. Did you see him do anything illegal? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Or, he continued, stepping closer, did you just assume? The woman's throat bobbed as she swallowed. She glanced around, but now the stares weren't ones of agreement. They were of judgment. Jake felt Lily shift beside him, her grip finally loosening. The weight of the moment settled over them all, thick and unshakable. The older officer sighed, rubbing his temple. Sir, you're free to go. Sorry for the inconvenience. Jake didn't answer. He didn't thank them. He just picked up his daughter, holding her close. The woman sputtered, her face reddening. So that's it? You're just letting him walk away? The younger officer gave her a long, measured look. You might want to walk away too, ma'am. For the first time, she seemed to realize that no one was on her side. Her confidence faltered, her lips pressing into a thin line. She turned sharply on her heel, muttering under her breath as she stormed off. The officer stepped back, signaling for the small crowd to disperse. Conversation started up again, but the energy had shifted. Jake adjusted Lily in his arms, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "We're okay," he murmured. She sniffled. "Can we go home now?" He nodded, setting her down and taking her hand. "Yeah, baby. We're going home." But as they walked away, he could still feel the weight of the encounter pressing against his back. The woman might have left, but the damage had been done. And something told him this wasn't over yet. Jake had hoped that walking away would be the end of it. That after the officers let him go, after the woman's accusations fell flat, she would leave humiliated and defeated. But some people don't know when to quit. He felt it before he saw it, an unease crawling up the back of his neck. The sensation of being watched. He kept his strides even, Lily's small fingers curled around his, but his senses were sharpened, every sound behind him amplified. Then just as they reached the parking lot, he heard the footsteps. Fast. Determined. "Wait." Jake turned, already knowing who it was. The woman was storming toward them, her expression twisted into something raw. Frustration, desperation, a need to reclaim the control she had lost. The officers were still by their squad car, watching but not moving. Jake tensed. "Lady, back off." Her hands curled into fists at her sides. "I'm not done with you." Lily pressed closer to his leg, her breathing shallow. He could feel her pulse racing. "Yeah, you are," Jake said, his voice steady. "The cops let me go. That should have been your sign to walk away." But she shook her head, her voice rising. "You think this is over? You think you can just pretend this didn't happen?" Jake exhaled sharply. "I'm not pretending anything. You made a mistake. A big one. And now you're trying to justify it instead of just admitting you were wrong." Her eyes flashed. "I wasn't wrong. I was being cautious. A responsible citizen." Jake let out a dry laugh. "A responsible citizen who grabbed a child that wasn't hers? Who ignored everything I said even when my daughter was crying?" A few people had paused on their way to their cars, their gazes flicking between them. The officers shifted slightly, still watching but unwilling to intervene. "Not yet." The woman lifted her chin. "You don't belong here." Jake stiffened. The words hung between them, heavier than everything else she had said before. She must have seen the shift in his expression because she doubled down. "I know your type. You think you can just play victim when people like me are the ones keeping kids safe. You should be thanking me." Lily whimpered. Jake's hands curled into fists, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Lady, I'm going to say this once. You need to step away from me and my daughter." For a second, just a second, hesitation flickered across her face. Then just as quickly it was gone. She reached for her phone again. "I should call CPS," she muttered. "Have them look into you." Something cold settled in Jake's chest. This wasn't just a woman who had made a bad call. This was a woman who refused to accept she had been wrong. And now she was willing to do whatever it took to prove herself right. But before he could speak, a voice rang out. "You need to leave them alone." The woman turned sharply. So did Jake. A man was stepping forward from the edge of the lot, phone in hand, recording. A bystander. "I saw everything," the man continued. "I watched you harass him before the cops even got here." He glanced toward the officers. "I recorded the whole thing too." The woman paled. Another voice spoke up. "So did I." A mother holding her toddler shifted her phone in her grip. "We've all been watching. And we're not okay with this." Jake felt a tightness in his chest. Not fear but something close to relief. He hadn't expected anyone to step up. They never did. The woman's gaze darted between the phones, her breath hitching. "I was just." "No," the first man cut in. "You weren't just anything. You targeted him because of what he looks like. You scared a little girl. And now you're trying to ruin his life because you don't want to admit you were wrong." The woman took a step back, her face reddening. "I was doing the right thing." The mother with the toddler let out a short laugh. "No. You were trying to be a hero in a story that didn't need one." For the first time the officers stepped forward. The older one's expression was unreadable, but the younger officer's jaw was tight. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "it would be in your best interest to walk away." The woman sputtered. "But..." "Walk away." She stood there for a long moment, her body rigid. Then slowly she turned on her heel and stalked off. The moment she disappeared into the lot, the tension in the air shattered. Jake let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The mother with the phone stepped closer. "Are you okay?" He glanced down at Lily, smoothing a hand over her curls. Yeah. We're okay. The man who had spoken first walked up, offering his phone. I'm sending you the video. If you want to report her, you should. Jake hesitated. A part of him wanted to let it go. To take Lily home, pretend this had never happened. But another part of him knew better. Yeah, he said, nodding. Send it. The man smiled, tapping his screen. Already did. Jake glanced at the officers. The younger one met his gaze, then gave him a short nod. It wasn't an apology. But it was something. He adjusted Lily in his arms and turned toward his car. The moment he opened the door and settled her inside, she let out a small breath. Daddy? Yeah, baby? Her voice was soft. Are we still going to the park tomorrow? Jake swallowed past the lump in his throat. He could have told her no. That it wasn't safe. That people like that woman existed everywhere, waiting for an excuse to see him as something he wasn't. But then he thought about the people who had stepped up. The ones who had spoken out. And he knew his answer. He smiled. Of course we are. Jake had barely pulled into his driveway when his phone buzzed again. Another notification. Another message. The video had taken less than an hour to spread, jumping from one person's feed to another, the internet doing what it did best, exposing the truth. He hadn't expected it to go viral. Hadn't expected to see his own face plastered across social media, his voice steady as he defended himself, while that woman, now identified as Karen Myers, stood seething, righteousness twisting her expression into something bitter. The comments were relentless. She really thought she could get away with this. Classic. She thought the cops would do the work for her. That little girl was terrified and she did not care. And then the deeper digging had begun. Karen wasn't just a nosy park-goer with a hero complex. People uncovered past complaints, former co-workers whispering about the way she had filed concerns about black employees at her job. A former landlord admitted she had once called the police on her neighbor's teenage son because she didn't like the way he looked at her. This wasn't her first time. But it was the first time she'd been caught on camera. Jake set his phone down on the kitchen counter, rubbing his temples. He should have been relieved. She was facing consequences, real ones. But the whole thing still sat like a weight on his chest. Lily sat at the table, legs swinging beneath her chair as she spooned cereal into her mouth. She was quieter than usual, still processing. Daddy? He glanced over. Yeah, baby? She hesitated, pushing the last few loops of cereal around in her bowl. That lady, is she gonna try to take me away? Jake's stomach twisted. He pulled out the chair next to her and sat down, gently taking her small hand in his. No, sweetheart. No one is taking you away from me. Ever. She searched his face, her green eyes still wide with something fragile. Even if she calls the police again? Jake swallowed past the tightness in his throat. The police know the truth now. Everybody does. She's not gonna hurt us. Lily seemed to accept that, though her little fingers still curled against his, as if holding on just in case. His phone buzzed again. Another message. This one from an unknown number. Unknown asterisk asterisk hope you see what you've done. You ruined my life. Asterisk. Jake stared at the screen, exhaling slowly. So Karen had found his number. He shouldn't have been surprised. A second message came through before he could even put the phone down. Unknown asterisk I lost my job because of you. He smirked humorlessly. It wasn't because of him. It was because of her. The next message was angrier. Unknown asterisk asterisk do you even understand what you've done? My friends won't even talk to me. My boss fired me over some stupid internet mob. All because you couldn't just walk away. Asterisk. Jake tapped his fingers against the counter, debating whether to respond. Then a final message. Unknown asterisk this isn't over. He felt something cold settle in his chest. A threat. Jake set the phone down, pressing his palms flat against the counter. Lily was still watching him. Daddy? He forced a smile. Everything's fine, baby. But it wasn't. Not yet. By morning, the story had reached the news. Local stations, then national headlines. Discussions on race, parenting, and the power of social media. Experts weighing in. Lawyers offering their services pro bono in case Jake wanted to press charges. Karen had officially lost everything. Her job. Her reputation. Her social circle. The world had seen her for what she was, and no carefully crafted excuse could erase the footage of her sneering at a crying child. Jake received an email from her former employer. Karen Myers has been terminated, effective immediately. We do not condone her behavior and appreciate those who brought it to our attention. Asterisk asterisk. Even as he read it, his phone buzzed again. This time an unknown call. He let it go to voicemail. The message that followed was brief, the voice tight with rage. "You think you won?" Jake let out a slow breath. He hadn't wanted a win. He had wanted to be left alone. By noon, reporters were at his door. He didn't answer. By afternoon, people online were making memes. Karen of the Year awards. Fake movie posters. A slowed-down edit of her face twisting in rage. He turned his phone off. By evening, an official report was released. The police were now looking into past false reports Karen had made, reconsidering previous cases she had influenced. And then, just before night fell, there was a knock at his door. Jake hesitated. Lily was in bed, her soft breathing carrying down the hall. Another knock. Firmer. Jake checked the peephole. It was the younger officer from the park. He opened the door but didn't speak. Just waited. The officer shifted on his feet. He looked tired. More than that, he looked like a man who had spent the last 24 hours re-evaluating things he had long believed to be true. "I wanted to check in," the officer said finally. "Make sure you and your daughter are okay." Jake studied him, searching for any sign of insincerity. He found none. "We're okay." The officer nodded, looking down. A beat of silence stretched between them. Then he exhaled. "I should have done more." Jake raised an eyebrow. "At the park?" the officer clarified. "I should have stepped in sooner. Should have questioned her instead of you." His jaw tightened. "I see that now." Jake didn't reply immediately. The anger that had sat heavy in his gut had dulled, but it was still there, a quiet ember. But so was something else. Understanding. Finally he nodded. "Yeah. You should have." The officer accepted that, his shoulders sinking slightly. "I'll do better." Jake considered that for a moment. Then finally he stepped back and nodded toward the porch. "You want to sit?" The officer hesitated, then gave a small, almost surprised smile. "Yeah. I'd like that." Jake grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, cracked one open, and passed the other to the man who, yesterday, had nearly arrested him. They sat in silence for a while, the night settling around them. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe it was a start.